The Olympic National Forest. Nearly 1,000,000 acres of moss, rain, and a silence so deep it feels ancient. It's a place of stunning beauty, but it's also indifferent. If you step off the trail here, the forest can swallow you whole. It's a place where people get lost. But some people don't just get lost. They vanish. Elias Thorne was 32 years old. He wasn't your typical hiker. He was a senior back-end architect for a major Seattle tech firm, one of the best in his field. He designed the kind of digital fortresses that protect banks and sensitive data. His world was one of pure logic, of code, of absolute certainty. But on October 14th, he drove his car west, away from the city, toward the vast and predictable wilderness. He told his sister, Clara, that he needed a hard reset. No internet. No cell signals. Just trees and quiet. He packed enough supplies for a 3-day solo trip. He was a capable man, meticulous in his planning. He was supposed to come back. He never did. The last known sighting of Elias Thorne is this security footage from a gas station on the edge of the peninsula. Here's Elias, filling his tank. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. But then, a black sedan pulls up behind him at the next pump. A figure gets out. We can't see their face, just a dark red hoodie. Let's call them the Red Hoodie. They approach Elias and start talking. At first, it looks casual, maybe asking for directions. This isn't a friendly chat. Then, the Red Hoodie hands him something small and dark. It looks like a standard USB flash drive. Elias hesitates for a moment, then takes it and slips it into his pocket. Who was this person? Police scoured the footage, but the sedan was a ghost. It had no front license plate, and the rear plate was completely obscured by a thick layer of mud. Was that just a lucky coincidence for the driver? Or was it a calculated, deliberate move? At 1:25 p.m., Elias finishes up and drives away. 4 minutes later, the black sedan follows him out of the parking lot. By 6 p.m. that evening, a massive storm front slammed into the Olympic Peninsula. The kind of storm that turns gentle streams into raging torrents and dirt roads into impassable mud pits. Elias was scheduled to check in with the owner of the rental cabin he'd booked by 7 p.m. That call never came. The search and rescue operation began 24 hours later, hampered by the relentless rain. For 2 days, they found nothing. No car, no tracks, no sign of Elias. It was as if he'd been erased. But then, on day 3, a glimmer of hope. A hiker, who had been caught in the storm and sheltered in a cave, reported seeing a man matching Elias's description near a treacherous area of the park known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Search teams immediately diverted all their resources to that sector. Helicopters flew low, their thermal cameras scanning the dense canopy for any sign of body heat. And they found something. A recently abandoned campsite. A small, hastily built lean-to. And a fire pit, with embers that were still warm to the touch. They were close. But the camp was empty. Elias's backpack was there, but his laptop bag was missing. Days turned into a week, then another. The search was officially scaled back. Hope was fading. And then, on day 14, a park ranger on patrol found it. Half buried in the mud and wet leaves, about 2 miles from the abandoned campsite, was Elias Thorne's laptop. Here's where this story goes from a tragedy to a chilling, high-tech mystery. The laptop, despite sitting in a rain-soaked forest for who knows how long, was bone-dry inside. Its waterproof casing had done its job perfectly. But that's not the weirdest part. The exterior had been meticulously wiped clean. There were no fingerprints. Not from Elias, not from anyone. It was sterile. Forensics experts at the State Crime Lab worked for a week to bypass the laptop's heavy encryption. Elias, being the security architect he was, had built a digital fortress. But they finally broke in. And what they found made no sense. The hard drive was a wasteland. It had been professionally wiped, erased using a method that overwrites data multiple times, making recovery impossible. All of his work, his personal files, his photos, gone. Except for one thing. A single, solitary video file was left in the center of the desktop. The file was named coordinates.mp4. It was 15 seconds long. The video is shaky, filmed in darkness, seemingly from inside a tent. You can hear the howling wind and rain from the storm outside. A man, presumed to be Elias, is visible. His face is pale, illuminated only by the light of the laptop screen. He looks terrified. He doesn't say a word. He just stares into the camera, his eyes wide. Then, the video cuts to black. That's it. 15 seconds of silent terror. Police were baffled. The timestamp on the video file was dated October 19, 5 days after Elias entered the park, and 2 days after his campsite was discovered. How could he have filmed this video on the 19th if his camp was found empty on the 17th? It was impossible. The video shouldn't exist. This contradiction led to a cascade of theories. The first, and most tragic, is that Elias suffered a mental breakdown. Overwhelmed by his high-stress job, he sought refuge in the forest, but the isolation and the violent storm pushed him over the edge. In this scenario, he wandered off from his camp, disoriented, and succumbed to the elements. The video, the wiped laptop, it was all the final act of a brilliant mind fracturing under pressure. His body, experts say, could easily be hidden by the vast and forgiving terrain and might never be found. But that theory doesn't explain the person in the red hoodie. It doesn't explain the surgically clean laptop or the impossible video timestamp. And that leads us to a much darker, more terrifying possibility. Corporate espionage and extraction. Remember that USB drive from the gas station. Investigators now believe it contained a highly sophisticated rootkit, a type of malicious software that gives an attacker complete, invisible control over a computer system. The moment Elias plugged that drive into his laptop, they owned him. They could see his screen, activate his webcam, track his location, and even plant or alter files. This theory suggests Elias wasn't trying to escape his job, he was trying to escape something else. Perhaps he had discovered something he shouldn't have, a secret buried deep within his company's network. The trip to the forest wasn't a vacation, it was a desperate attempt to get off-grid, to find a place with no signals where he could analyze his findings without being watched. But they followed him. The person in the red hoodie wasn't a stranger, they were an operative. The campsite wasn't abandoned, it was a trap. The theory goes that Elias was never lost in the woods. He was extracted, taken. The body was never found because there is no body to find. Elias Thorne is alive, somewhere, being forced to use his brilliant mind for purposes we can only imagine. The laptop, then, wasn't left behind by accident. It was planted. It was a message, a trophy left by his captors. A warning to anyone else who might think of crossing them. It says, you can try to disconnect, but you can never truly leave the system. And the final piece of this puzzle. A week after his laptop was found, Elias Thorne's Twitter account, which had been dormant for months, posted a single tweet. It contained nothing but a string of numbers. They were GPS coordinates. When investigators plotted them on a map, they didn't point to a mountain or a remote cabin. They pointed to a location in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. A desolate spot, thousands of miles from any landmass. A place where nothing exists. Except for the massive undersea fiber optic cables that carry the world's data along the seafloor. So what do you think happened to Elias Thorne? Was it a tragic breakdown in the face of nature's power? And if you want to be the first on the scene for our next investigation, make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe. And maybe think twice before plugging in a strange USB drive.